So, morning everybody. My name is Martin Underwood, World After Sport. Great to have a fantastic group of people in. We've got a number of new visitors today, so welcome to you all. As Managing Director of World After Sport, we're hosting these sporting transition conversations so that we can drive thoughts, ideas, views of all of you guys, and hopefully share that with a much wider public going forward, including your clubs, maybe your former clubs, etc. So today's conversation is all about the expectations of the modern athlete. How that's changed over the years, also how you feel about the expectations, the views of a director of rugby, or the views of a coach, the views of your family. How that has changed over the years is quite an interesting one to go through. I think with professionalism, things have changed quite a lot. And Stimo, Hoggy can probably add some thoughts and views from the past, a lot more than some of you, and probably Andy as well. And a few of you are current players and also recent retirees. So let's just have a good candid conversation. So before I kick off with the conversation itself, let's just hand around the room. So Stimo, can I pass to you first just to say a quick intro? And you're on mute, mate, if you want to start with that.
Yeah, hello. Obviously I'm 46 years old now, so really old for some of you guys on my screen. But privilege of playing with and against people like Serge and Dan. The most important thing to say is I think we're all quite scared when we meet people who we don't know. And we have to be very careful about opening up and talking about our fears and our expectations and worries, etc. So the first thing to say about Martin is that I just met him in the local, pub down the road in Rutland. Started talking, came to me via other players. And I personally found him really useful. I've talked about player transition. I'm now 46, so it's a long time ago. 2006 was when I retired. And it's taken me a long time to really find, I suppose, a settled career and real value, where I'm not just earning a living, which is the priority when you retire, but also actually feeling like I'm having a good time and I'm proud of what I do. So I suppose the most important thing to say is I think Martin's heart's in the right place. He is a rugby nose. So that's, he's a proper Tigers fan and all the rest of it, which made me a little bit suspicious of him. Gave him a hard time for like the first 2 or 3 meetings. But I just think that's the most important thing to say is that his heart's in the right place. And I think he's got skills and passion that can help other players. So that's the most important thing I can say, I think, really, is that I am now thriving in my business career. I've got 3 kids running around here doing homeschooling. I've got a missus that's working from home, so you're bound to hear noise and distraction. I suppose the best thing about COVID-19 is that I've had a chance to reconnect with some amazing friends. And I suppose it's reminded me that a lot of our friends are from our rugby days and they're stationed off around the world. And because sort of life gets in the way, we lose contact. So what an opportunity this is via virtual media to start being honest and sharing views. The truth is transition's horrible. The truth is you're never going to replace your favourite days running out in front of a packed crowd. But you've got to find the new you. So I suppose we came up with the idea of the business of you, so that it's not a cliff that we fall off at the end of a career, be that injury or be that retirement. It's hopefully something you've planned for. It's things that you can do even when you're 18, 19, 20, that you are developing skills, understanding how you can transfer those skills, and you've actually got somewhere to go. So if you're injured, you can put your heart and soul into the business of you without it preventing you from training 100%. Well, actually, it's going to make you a better player if you're not scared about the fear of getting injured. So I think the plan is just to help share best practice, talk about some of the genuine fears that we all have. Worst case scenario, we've got a safe place to come and chat to your mates, chat to your peers. And on a best case scenario, we can start working towards, a bigger, brighter future. So I suppose that's my intro. That's, I'm not doing this to make a massive living. I'm doing this because I think it's a really important thing that if we work together, we can make a better living. We can share networks. We can do business development. But for me, my primary goal is to reconnect with real quality people. When I came into what I call Civvy Street, I found a load of idiots, a load of people that are very quick to take advantage of your black book, and not that willing in the long-term investment in you as a person. So I did get let down by insurance companies, did get let down by property companies, did make some dodgy investments. And hell, I had a degree in anthropology and I was a player's rep. So don't take my advice, lads. So the truth is, you've got to try and plan. You've got to try and learn from people brighter than you. And I think the problem we have, we don't know really who to trust. And so this is a start where we can start building trust, building some proper friendships, relationships that hopefully by pooling the best things that happen to us all, we can all have a happier and brighter future.
Martin, I think you're on mute.
I'm on mute. I didn't know I'd muted myself. I apologise. Here's the man trying to say, Cole, come off mute, and I'm on mute. Hoggy, can I come to you?
Yeah, I'm even older than Stimmel, so I'm 50-year-old now. Definitely started my career as an amateur. Did a full-time civil engineering degree and also got international rugby in 1992, so was able to play top-end rugby as well as full-time education, and then was in the advent of obviously professionalism in 96, 97, so went through that whole era of completely amateur into professional, and then went into professional coaching. Was lucky enough to play with Dan Scarborough and Raleigh at Leeds, which is a fantastic opportunity. Then through Phil Davis went into coaching and been in full-time coaching ever since. 7 or 8 years at Gloucester as a forwards coach, 5 years as a head coach director rugby at Worcester, now at Osprey. So I've seen rugby evolve over the last 20, 25 years hugely, from a completely amateur ethos and amateur game where you knew if you were playing international rugby, it allowed you to network in a certain space, and you understood the need to connect with people outside the game, or the game was your avenue or vehicle to connect with people, and then went purely down the, say, professional route where it was all just about the game. And I think my interest in World After Sport is nowadays coaching is about developing people, not just developing players. And it fascinates what motivates young men nowadays to do what they do. I think the game physically has gone through the roof. So to understand what makes them tick is a big part of what we do as coaches. Long gone are the days of just giving direction and instruction. It's more about building relationship with your players, understanding your players, not just on the field, but off the field, and hence my interest.
Thanks, Carl. Mr. Sanger, can I come to you next? You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Morning all. Andy Sanger. I've got a slightly different path into this webinar than most. I'm currently at Harlequins as the player and staff development and welfare manager, which covers a vast array of things, from helping with transitioning guys into the club, from helping their development off field. Clearly, Guzzy leads on everything sort of on field with a good coaching team there, but it's their wider development, and then also working in conjunction with the RPA, which I've got a real interest in this, about the transition of players, so out of the club and also out of the game. Prior to being at Harlequins, I had quite a long military career. I spent nearly 30 years in the army, and played and coached the Army senior team. So it was interesting that there was when I first started playing in the forces, there was 10, 12 internationals, and they had dual careers, much like what Hoggy was saying, where people had a job and also combined a career. I stayed on a little bit longer. I was in a relatively specialist area, So the areas around performance, and it's interesting again what Hoggy says about developing people. I've seen so many similarities between the military, the army in particular, and professional rugby. There are so many connections, so many similarities, so many crossovers that probably both can learn from, I would think. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. Brett, can I hand over to yourself next?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to put in place kind of options and talk to people and get people's perspective on best practice to kind of get myself ready for World After Rugby. And I guess the next however many years that I can keep playing professional rugby, based up in Newcastle, and have been since I was 18, so 5 years now. So it's all I've known. So it's nice to talk to you guys, get your opinions on other aspects of life and kind of world outside of Newcastle, really. So at the minute, I've done a degree outside through the RPA in leadership and management, and currently studying to be a financial advisor. But at the same time, just trying to talk to many communities and go down different avenues and kind of see what I think that I'd progress in life after rugby. And I think talking to you guys and getting your opinions on what you guys thought helped during your careers and post-career will make a massive difference.
Brilliant. Thanks, Brett. Let's hope we can help you out a bit with that. No pressure. Okay. Mr. Hobbs, Sam, can I take you off mute?
Yeah, so I'm Sam Hobbs, former pro rugby player with the Blues and the Dragons. Recently transitioned now out of rugby. Met Phil at the Blues, I think it was 2012 he came in, so that's when I started to get to know him. My story is probably the age I am now. I'm 32, probably the first generation that's come out of full-time academy professionalism. So joined the academy when I was 17, now transitioned all the way through rugby and coming out the other end. So it's probably a bit different to the other guys who've been in the amateur area all the way through to the professional game. So yeah, at the moment, it's just trying to find my feet. Probably the last 18 months, finished my career probably 2 years earlier than I originally planned. Probably not through my sort of decision, unfortunately. Couldn't really find another club. So things obviously happened a lot sooner than I expected. So the last probably 18 months to 2 years has just been a bit more frantic than I would have expected. And even though I probably felt I planned for as much as possible, so I did a degree, was doing my coaching badges, things like that throughout my career. Ultimately, it all came down to opportunities, and I found I didn't have the right opportunity right at the end when I needed it. It's about trying to find as best you can, really. So happily now at the moment I'm in the Dragons coaching with their academy setup, and I'm really enjoying it. But obviously the last 18 months has been a challenge.
Brilliant. Sam, are you dropping off at 10:30?
Yeah, I'm going to have to shoot on to another webinar at 10:30. Yeah, sorry.
All right, mate. Well, if we can help you or if you can join these calls going forward, that would be brilliant. Obviously,
Yeah,
I'd love to have you on again.
Definitely.
Okay, great. Mr. Rawlinson.
There we go. Morning,
If you need
gents.
to get a plane in before you introduce yourself, just let us know.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm on a bit of an old laptop here. Apologies about that. Pretty much like Hoggy, really. I sort of entered into professional rugby right at the start of it. I was at Oral at the time when it turned professional in sort of 95, 96. And I was there for 4 years before jumping across the Pennines to join Leeds with Phil. And I spent 10 years there. Ended up retiring in 2010 through a neck injury. And I think the biggest thing, or the biggest shock, was I weren't quite ready in my own mind to finish. And when injury comes, it's, the carpet gets whipped from under your feet, and that's what I sort of struggled with in my own mind, because I wasn't, personally, I wasn't ready to finish. I always felt I had a couple of years left inside me. And that void takes a bit of filling, when you're used to being around the changing room. And I was, as Hoggy and Scabs and Stimo will probably tell you, I was, I was in amongst it all, let's say. I always like to be part of the crowd and things like that, and in and amongst people. And I just have a good laugh whilst we're there. And I thoroughly enjoyed my career at rugby. But like I say, I struggled a little bit after that finished, and I hadn't set anything up because foolishly I always thought rugby'd last forever. I was just one of them people that wanted to be in and around that forever, and unfortunately that didn't work out. So it was a pretty, it was a bit of a struggle for the first few months, but then through my connections through the club, what I'd done, I'd just sent my CV round to all the sort of schools that we'd trained at, and some of the connections that I had. And where I work at now, Queen Ethelburgers up in York, it's an independent school. And the director of rugby at the time, he was a season ticket holder at Leeds, which obviously worked in my favour. And, and I've been there since. And I think one of the things that I've seen more so a change in perhaps the young people that are stepping into rugby now is that it's just that they've all got a big expectation. There's an expectation to be seen to be doing the right thing, whether that's on social media or whatever. But I think that the way that the academy system is now, it seems, from my point of view, it seems to build them up. But then, they get to a point, and then where they're getting released and stuff, and it's like the end of the world for them. So what we're trying to produce now is just good, well-rounded people, really. And try and give them good values, not to try and keep their feet on the ground a little bit, because it is, not everybody plays in front of big crowds like we've been privileged to do so. So it's just giving them that sense of realization of it takes a lot of hard work to get there, but that percentage of players now that are actually making it into the Premiership, that young people, I think it's going a bit like football. It's becoming smaller and smaller. So it's just it's a lot of hard work to get there, but obviously it's a great career once we're in it.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Really appreciate that intro. Dan.
Unmuted. Yeah.
Well done.
I think, thank you first for inviting me on. Hi, Phil. Good to see you again. Been a while. Rawley, Hoggy, Serge, everybody. It's great to see you. It's great for me personally to kind of reconnect with people up in Yorkshire. I think for me, I don't know where my introduction goes, but I'm 42 now. Phil probably remembers me as a young, bit of a nutcase running around Leeds, not doing anything he wanted me to do. And times have changed. I've grown up in body, but probably not in mind. 2 kids, wife. Probably talk too much when asked questions like this and asked to introduce myself. But I think my pathway, having been somebody who just kind of loved rugby, enjoyed rugby. I wasn't in any particular academies. My first bit of recognition, I suppose, was Yorkshire 19s, having gone to 10 or 20 different trials in yellow socks and different coloured boots and whatever else to try and get noticed. Suddenly dropped in at Yorkshire 19s. I went to university in Manchester. I then came across. I was lucky enough to go from Bradford Salem down in kind of lowly Yorkshire 7 up to Broughton Park at University of Manchester, across to Wakefield as I was kind of finishing uni, and then Phil plucked me out of there. I suppose to have a bit of a stab as Leeds went into the Premiership, and things went pretty well for me then from that point on. 3 good years at Leeds, really enjoyed it. Moved on to London for 5 years, across to France for 5 years. Managed to get a few England caps along the way, played England 7s. So, really enjoyable career. Battled a lot through injury among it. And then dropped back into Yorkshire, really, having had a great time within rugby, starting a family. 2 young children, and dropped kind of back into Yorkshire. I had some opportunities in France to stay on and do some coaching out there, having done a little bit out there. But it seemed the time came, was right for health issues with the family, etc. We came home. Now, again, an opportunity similar to Rob, actually. I dropped in for a cup of tea with the headmaster at Bradford Grammar, who was a rugby fan, a Bristol supporter. And it just worked out. The timing was perfect. They were looking for a bit of a kickstart with the rugby again. I was keen to come home. Dropped in there, did 3 years, having actually probably strangely had enough of rugby. I wanted to get away from it. It was a bit of a dark time. I've kind of I felt like I was done with it and I needed to do something different. So I started teaching. The school agreed to take me on. I was going to look after the senior rugby, the first team, and alongside that, I was looking to do my teacher training to give me something to fall back on. Essentially, because I had a degree, I could do it. I could go into independent schools and I could begin teaching. So I did a PGC in design and technology, bit of woodwork, and whatever else. It was great, good to connect with the kids. It gave me a bit of something different. And actually, for the first 6 months, it was a bit of a relief, really, to be out of it all and focus on something completely different. However, 6 months down the line, suddenly the realization kind of kicked in that rugby is fantastic. It's great. The people within it are fantastic, and I wanted to be back in that domain. So I kind of was trying to push a little bit back towards the rugby from the DT. Having got the DT PGC in the bag, I felt again I had something to fall back on. But yeah, 3 good years at Bradford Grammar. The only way really for me to move deeper back into rugby was to find another opportunity. And Rob sat there, contacted me about going up potentially to Queen Ethelburgers. Again, contacts within rugby, people you can trust. I went up there, had 2 good years, diving right back into rugby again, purely rugby coaching. I did my level 3 and progressed things there. It was a bit of a hike. It was a good hour, over an hour at times to get to and from work. So I'm now back at where I've trained up at Bradford Grammar, but I've gone back in as a coach rather than a player. So I've now been in teaching for 6 and a bit years. Enjoy it, although it is difficult, very difficult. I think when you first get into something probably different outside of rugby, as Stimo kind of alluded to, you're a bit of a star. Everybody wants a piece of you. Everybody kind of wants that kind of that rugby specialist and that kind of rugby element behind it. And then as you become part of the furniture, that disappears a little bit, and you're getting more and more and more comes onto what you're actually meant to be doing. You get into more pastoral stuff. You get into pull from pillar to post, and for not a great wage, for not a great amount of money, you are under the pump again, which is for me has been quite tough actually to kind of sift out what I should and shouldn't be doing within the school and what suits. But it's been interesting. I'm at a stage now where I feel I'm missing probably quite a bit of the performance side of it. Bradford Grammar is a great school, fantastic school, very academic. We're good at rugby, but and I'm also doing a little bit locally with my local rugby club where I began up at Bradford Salem, level 7. So I'm getting a little bit of that element, which again, the different kettle of fish altogether regarding my coaching. I've dropped in, done a little bit of specialist coaching here, there, and everywhere. But I'm kind of at a path now where I really need to kind of assess where I'm at and kick on. A little bit of kind of comfortable at home, comfortable at school. It is testing times at school, but now I feel like I'm kind of reassessing, and I need to a little bit of itchy feet. I'm kind of uncomfortable now being comfortable, if that translates properly. But yeah, no, it's great to hook up with everybody. The big element I suppose I found as soon as I stepped outside of rugby at all was that element of trust. When you're in it, there is a circle of trust. Everybody kind of, if you do shaft somebody or somebody shafts you within that environment, then it'll come back to haunt you within rugby. Outside of that, it's like a shark pool, isn't it? And the trust just isn't there. So great to hook up with everybody, and hope I haven't bored you too much with my story.
Is he done?
I'm done. I like to talk.
Thanks, Dan. No, really appreciate it. Elliot, can I come to you? You're still on mute, mate. Let me unmute you. There you go. Go for it.
Hi lads, Elliot D. Thanks for having me on. Just a bit about myself. I'm 26. Probably at a strange but exciting time in my career. The last couple of years have been pretty mental. Obviously, every boy's dream when they grow up playing rugby is to play for their country, play for Wales, and that's probably happened quite quickly in the last couple of years. I haven't really had time to reflect, but always had a bit of a worry bit of a sort of what happens next after rugby. Always had one eye on that. So I'm always thinking of the future, probably interested in a bit of property stuff, but not really sure what I want to do full time after rugby. So it's just great to listen to everyone and try and pick up some tips, some connections. Yeah, and that's it really from me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Elliot. Regarding your comment about the property side of things, Warby was talking about that last time we had a meeting. So it might be worth you popping onto our YouTube to have a listen to what he had to say.
Right, yeah. Cheers.
It was worth listening to. Ollie, can I come to you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, cheers for having me on. Similar to Elliot, we both play for the same club in Dragons. I'm a year younger, so 25. A little bit undecided what I want to do. There's a few avenues I've sort of started upskilling myself with, doing some online courses, doing my coaching badges, going to be doing my level 3 when things go back to normal. Interested in the strength and conditioning sort of things alongside rugby. And I've been educating myself as much as possible, property-wise, a little bit of work experience through courses and stuff like that. So I'm just trying to make the most of this opportunity that we've got a few months or weeks off from rugby, and trying to hone in on one avenue to go down and just meet like-minded people, really, and get as much education and knowledge as I can in this time.
Brilliant. Okay. Serge, if you're on mute, let me pass over to your good self.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you very much, Martin, for getting me into this group of people. Just great initiative, well done, and really privileged to be part of this group of people. People who don't really know who I am. I'm a French. Sorry for my accent. I retired. Next year will be 10 years. I retired in 2011, playing for London Wasps. Before that, I was playing in France, in Biarritz, Southwest, and I decided after the World Cup 2007 to move to England to learn English and also discover another experience in rugby, and I found out to staying after my 3-year contract with Wasps, and I decided to stop playing, which is giving me a lot of great time, but at the same time a lot of challenge. It's true. I hear about Tim struggling when he retired. It's true that I didn't really plan the way I wanted to retire. Even before that, before I retired from the national team, my dream was to play the World Cup, which I played in 2007, and unfortunately, the end of the World Cup didn't happen the way I was dreaming. Then that's why I decided to move to London and have another experience, and which is gave me great opportunities from that experience to stay in London. And I've been here with my family for 10 years. I really enjoying and embrace the challenge, but at the same time realize that I love the country. I love the people. Let's say the mind side of English people, the way they talk about rugby, the way they talk about sport is very powerful compared to France, and I really enjoy that aspect because as an athlete I always wanted to be at my best, and I think the way people talk about sports in the UK is it's a far more deep into what we can do. And I think I'm really privileged to say that this project of World After Sport it's phenomenal because, as Tim said, we never had that opportunity to talk about how we can help each other, how we can do things in order to just collaborate like we used to in the playing fields. then and I think it's very, very powerful. My objective when I retired was to do different things, because I didn't want it to go to do coaching. I didn't want it to do just pundit. I wanted to experience different things, different fields, in order to feel which one I will want it to do, because I knew that coaching will be a challenge for me. Why? Because I played 20 years of high level, and I wanted to take time to, for example, look after my kids, because I had a very bad experience while I was playing. My first daughter, when I was born, while I was playing for France, and I didn't want it to. I wanted to, like say it. I wanted to change that experience. And this is one of the decisions I made. I went to coaching. I coached London Scottish in defense, but I didn't want to take a role of full time, because I know the amount of time is demand in order to be a good coach. But my dream job is about coaching, but I didn't take that. I decided I'm not going to take it. And after 18 months, I decided to stop coaching for London Scottish to do my own program. And I went back to the basics. And these days, I sell rugby to schools. My program is about introducing rugby to kids, boys and girls. And I really enjoy it, because in France we do rugby within the clubs, not at the school, and I found it really enjoyable. Because why do I do that? I do that because I did university in the past before I switched to full professional career. I did PE. And when I retired, I wanted to go back to the basics, to do something will match with my day-to-day family life, and I think coaching the kids was something really relevant and mean for me. Then I've been doing that for 5 years now. I've got my own program. I sell rugby to schools. I've got 11 schools now around London, and this is part of what I call my company called Searchbet and Consulting, and we do several consulting activities, which is from team building to motivational speech to delivering the introduction to rugby to schools. This is what I do, and also I've got 2 charities. One is helping underprivileged kids back in Africa, where I'm from originally, and the second is trying to get the connection with the ex-professional players in France, and all that I think keep me on my toes and keep me very, very humble of what rugby gave me. As you may know, I discovered rugby, and fortunately in Paris region, and I always say that rugby gave me the tools and the world to express who I am and who I want to be. And I think it's very important for each individual to really understand where he wants to go, which is what sports give us. We have the desire to be the best of our field, but at the same time you need to make it also work for you and for your life. And I think rugby is one of the powerful sports for that. And this project is another example where I definitely believe that throughout different experience, we can share our experience. We can share things we did in the past, and our success and our failure without any judgment. And I think that is the beauty of my sport, and we can do so much all together to just be who we are. And this is it. I think I made very clear let's say, overall of who I am and what I want to achieve. And I think this project is one of the things I always I've been doing since I retired 10 years ago in 2011. And it's great to be part of this discussion and understand all your experience and life. Thank you, Martin. And I think I'm done.
Thank you, Serge. Really appreciate it. Last but not least, Phil, we'll come to you just for a quick intro and then we'll crack on with the subject.
Yeah, just firstly, I may apologise for being late. My wife's decided to change Wi-Fi providers now in the middle of all this, so it's a bit of chaos in our house. But apologies, and great to see everyone. Great to see some familiar faces, and also Serge, good to see you, and Elliot and Ollie, two young players. I really admire. Two guys who've done really well in the last couple of years playing for the Dragons and Wales. So, thanks to everyone for coming on. The reason I got involved with Martin and Tim, talking about transitions, was about the players really and my own experience. My coaching philosophy is very much player-centred, development driven and competition supported. That's how I look at coaching. And I'm always keen to to support players, as I was as a player when I was captain at Llanelli. And I played in the amateur era, and where I worked and had a lot of structure around my life. And then going into the first sort of intake, if you like, of professional coaches in '96, I was going into something where only 3 professionals, the rest of the squad we had at the time were amateurs, and there was no structure to an extent. So I was going from a real structured life into something that was pretty unstructured in the first instance, and I had to learn pretty quickly how to structure my own day, as well as the day of all the other people involved in the club. And I've enjoyed it. I'm passionate about coaching, about players, helping players learn and develop and grow, and that's why I got involved in this in the first instance. And it's great to see everyone sharing their experiences, and hopefully it'll have a real value to everyone moving forward, and the group can grow and grow and grow and add real value. So thanks everyone, and thanks Matt.
My pleasure, and thank you everyone again. So as we said at the start, today's really about the expectations of the modern athlete. I have to use the term athlete, not player, because we're talking about rugby today, but we could be talking about someone in the Olympics. We could be talking about someone in their own personal sport, which is not team. So I tend to use the phrase athlete whenever I say, but it's something that can apply to all sorts. And as Mr. Sanger said earlier, you could also be looking at this from a military side of things as well, because what we're talking about here is people who've got a very short career in their, let's call it, playing days, contribution days, and then we go to what Tim calls the civvy street, of looking for what is my next opportunity, and how do I utilize the people around me effectively? How do I pick and choose the ones that are going to give me good advice? How do I pick and choose, or actually close the door on the people who are going to give me bad advice? And like I say, the expectations are growing. The expectations of the athlete grow by the day. The demand of the social media aspect, the demand of the actual media, demand from a family perspective, to me, has grown hugely over the years. So today's a little bit about that expectation shift, how we can manage it, how we can utilize it, how maybe we can help each other, how World After Sport can help, how people like Phil can help, and really how we can just learn and take those skill sets away and hopefully apply them to life going forward. So I'll come to Phil first, because Phil's my kind of co-host and counterpart and companion to start the conversation. But please do chip in, offer your views, offer your thoughts, your ideas as we go through. It's not a case of me and Phil. It's about all of us contributing. So Phil, expectation, you must have felt those expectations change, certainly as your career has progressed from player to coach to DOR, nationally, internationally, as much as anything.
Yeah, it's a good question, Martin, obviously, and hence the reason why we're all sort of getting together. I think, the key thing for me is the planning and the power of planning and the power of structure to an extent, obviously, so that you plan well, during your career, or you plan well during your playing career in terms of what you're going to do after. be aware and have a good understanding of the skills and the transferable skills that you can actually that you actually learn as a player. That, as Ollie had mentioned, he's been doing some courses to upskill himself. But there are also things you learn, within rugby, like good values, work ethic, team spirit, communication, networking, and lots of things you learn along the way. And it's how you then transfer those into, as Tim says, into Civvy Street. So there's a lot of skills you'll naturally learn, and it's important to understand, I believe, how you can transfer them and use them as you move on. Having a good structure in your day as a professional is pretty easy because you're told what to do a lot of the time. But then it's also important to have a balance in order to disconnect from that and follow other paths, whether it's a passion of reading, writing, playing a piano, playing a guitar, whatever it might be. Something that's a little bit different that can take you away from the game a little bit, and the pressures of the game, particularly at professional level and the level that some of these boys are playing nowadays. So for me, the importance is planning well and having a good structure and understanding the skills that you develop along the way, but also having balance within all of that.
Absolutely. And I guess from my side, there's a bit. I've worked in a corporate world for 20 plus years. I used to play sport, but nowhere near at professional level. I was sort of semi-pro level. I didn't get that experience, but from a corporate level, it's exactly the same. And one of the reasons we have these conversations, and I kind of help from my angle, is to almost provide that confidence that actually a lot of what you do on the pitch, off the pitch, is absolutely transferable. So communication skills, organizational skills, leadership skills, they're all very much applied tomorrow to something that could be a totally left field, pardon the pun, career. Even in teaching, you still have to be planned, organized, know what's going on. I'm sure that the likes of Dan would testify to those kind of things. And that for me, planning and having a sense of where you're going, whether it's as a person or into your own in life, that is powerful. So I mean, Dan, if you don't mind me coming to yourself, you obviously gave us a really good synopsis of your career and how you've transitioned. How does planning play a part for you today? How does it differ today to yesterday?
That as Rob will probably testify from my time at Great Ethelberg, that for me is probably the hardest thing that I've had to deal with. The organisation, the planning, from being, as Phil rightly said, my life was mapped out for me. I went to school, I went to university, I got into professional rugby. Everything, your days are mapped out and planned out. And suddenly then, I'm not only responsible for myself, my wife, my kids, I'm now responsible for all the other kids that teach within the school. At the minute, I'm director of rugby essentially at Bradford Grammar School, which, there's 1,200 kids there, and half of those will play rugby. So it's one of those where that has been the biggest issue. But I think that the interesting thing, seeing it from a school point of view, is the environment for the kids these days. All of them who play rugby, I think there's pressures now within schools to get scholarships. There's pressures now within schools put on potentially by performance coaches. The number of performance coaches within schools. Previously it was, if I look at my little world, I suppose that I'm in now, you have PE teachers teaching kids within school. It's a hobby for them to have a great team and whatever. But nowadays, I think a lot of schools are going down this coaching idea. So they're doing away with the number of PE teachers. They're bringing in coaches. Now that puts on more pressure, probably, to have a performance environment and push the kids, more so within schools. Academies then want these players. Every school, we don't offer scholarships. It's something that we don't do. We don't offer sports scholarships. We do academic bursaries, academic scholarships. We're kind of keen not to go down that route. But I think the number of scholarships being offered, and I think the idea of pathways, it's things that are thrown around at the minute, creates such a big pressure for the children these days to be in a pathway, in an academy, get a scholarship. One, you can get into a decent school. No matter whether you've money or no money, you can get into a decent school if you are a good rugby player or a good footballer or a good whatever. So there's pressure on children from a young age to be in that performance environment, I think, from a lot earlier than it used to be. And that pressure kind of builds, as Rob kind of alluded to earlier as well as introduction, that, you know, you now have these boys, you know, that suddenly come off a cliff because they're thinking they can be a professional rugby player. And we all know about the percentage of footballers and rugby players and whatever it may be who actually want to be, think they're going to be pro, and then suddenly, you know, unlucky, and you've actually, your academics has suffered because of it, and now you're in a bit of a pickle. Probably where we are when we come out of professional rugby. These kids are in a similar position when they come out of school, having, you know, not got the academy contract or whatever it is that they were after when they finished. So that was quite interesting for me. I think this idea of pathways is great, but there's got to be a bit of reality to it. You know, everything's going down pathways and academies rather than actually potentially enjoying your rugby at a young age, you know, getting involved with your club more so, and then dropping onto it probably a little bit later on. I find that quite interesting personally. You might want to touch on that, Rob.
Yeah, I'll just touch on that, Dan. Sorry, yeah. I think I totally agree with the pressure thing that the kids are under these days. I like myself, like I said before, went into the coaching at school as director of rugby, and now I'm head of sport up at Queen Ethelberga. So I see a lot of, obviously, different sports, not just rugby. And the pressure's there throughout whatever sport because of the external pressures these kids are under these days. But I think the main thing that we've got to deliver and keep at the centre of everything that we do, they're still kids. You know, we've got to keep it fun for these kids, and they've got to, you know, not every kid wants to play rugby. You know, like Dan was saying, where the old PE teachers of the day, you know, everything was about winning and they'd do anything to make that happen. Whereas now these days, it's not about that. You know, it's about the kids getting engaged in the rugby. And then if they carry on playing rugby once they've left school, we've done our job, you know, because they enjoy it then. So that's certainly something that I push within our school. It's fun. We keep the kids engaged. And if they don't want to do it, you know, all right, they still have to keep busy, and we're trying to get them involved and stuff. But, you know, it's not the be-all and end-all if they don't like a game of rugby. You know, there's always something else they can do, and it's just finding that niche for that particular child. That's certainly the message that I send out at school.
Brilliant. Going back to the planning for a second, Tim, I mean, you've obviously undertaken plans at different levels as well, whether it's in sport or more recently, obviously out of sport, business side of things.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about the transferable skills, and it's really important that we know what they are and how to use them. I think one thing we're not very good at is planning. Like Scab said, we spent our whole lives getting up and being spoon-fed from, you know, spinning at 7 o'clock in the morning through to having 60 tablets because Clive's getting a backhander. Sorry, I forgot this has been recorded. The truth is we're not very good at planning for ourselves. You know, that's what we're not doing. I'd be, you know, really interested in going to Andy Sanger because you're doing the job now, aren't you, down at Quins? But and when we come out, we're not planning. We're off the hoof all the time. Who do we know? Give them a ring, get a job. Whereas if we can be really smart about the planning and understand what are our transferable skills, how do we market those properly? How do we write the very, very best CV? Which means we're not going for one job. We've got 100 people asking us if we'll come and work for them. So I think we've just got to appreciate we're not trained how to plan. And that's a big gap in our armory, that we've got to find the right people or develop the right skills while we're still playing, ideally.
Absolutely. Andy, do you want me to come to you?
Yeah, Tim, thanks. It's when we look at the heading about the expectations of the modern athlete, I think that's not just the modern athlete. I think it's a societal thing, and that sport is just a microcosm of that. So I think, you know, teenagers, young men, and women in the areas that we're in, I think they just demand more, and quite rightly, because there's more money, there's more exposure, there's more TV rights, etc. So they are the ones putting their body on the line, so to speak. So they expect more, and I think that's partly because of and I mentioned earlier, the performance pathways that they've come through. You know, they've always got to get to the top. They've always got to achieve it. It's similar to my previous sort of career. But in regard to when we're talking about planning, I think it's what Sam and Elliot said. I think one of the difficulties is that people can't identify what they want to do. I think that's the first thing. It's identifying what you're good at, whether it be, you know, because everyone thinks about getting academic, but the reality is, you know, probably a third, maybe a half of people aren't academic. So it's identifying the skills that they've got. Because once you've identified what you've got and what skills you've got, therefore you know the gap. So therefore you can plan. So I think planning is absolutely right. But I think first off, you've got to understand the individual, understand his strengths, his weaknesses, the quality he's got, the soft skills, because I think Martin touched on it. What I am getting from the businesses and the companies that we deal with at Quins is that they don't necessarily want the guy with the degree or who's that academic, but what they want is the person with character, with values, with who can command a room, who can express himself a little bit better. Because there are, and this is not to mention education, so obviously it's vital, but there's lots of people that are coming through their degree schemes. What the advantage that the athlete, or in our case the rugby player, has is that he offers something different, and it's really accentuating the qualities that he's got, as well as, you know, planning, etc. So I think it's that identifying piece, and then the plan is crucial, and that was with the military and with rugby, with my experience.
Yeah, I think we underestimate our leadership qualities.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we've been given responsibility, and we know how to trust the guy on the left and the guy on the right. It's instinctive to us, but for a lot of people, it isn't.
Yeah. No, I think it's crucial when you say, and there's a lot of boys with us who really utilise the contacts that the club have got, and I think that's probably something that we weren't doing as well, because, you know, Quins, like most rugby clubs, have got really good connections, both at the level that probably will open opportunities, and going into a room and talking to a managing director. Most rugby players will be comfortable to do that because they've probably stood up in whether it's a unit meeting or a squad meeting and had to express an opinion on something, and it's not something that young adults are comfortable in doing. So I think, again, a rugby player or the athlete has an advantage in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's now my job. No, I now do leadership in the corporate world. I motivate in the corporate world, and I keep finding chiefs of business saying, Stemmer, why can't I find people who ask for forgiveness, not permission?
Yeah.
Don't need them coming to me and telling me that somebody's parked in the disabled bay.
Yeah.
Why can't they just go outside and get them to shift the car? Yeah. And I think as rugby players, we step up because we're judged on our performance every minute, aren't we? And I think we underplay that hand. And knowing how to play that properly will give you a lot more confidence going into a room of all the guys with all the degrees and all the ties on, but they can't make a decision, boys. And we've got that in spades.
And I think from my side, it touches a bit on what Rob said, as well as what Andy said, as well as what Tim said, which, if you combine a lot of that, which is one, what does the athlete enjoy? So they enjoy the sport, but how can we help them understand what else they'll enjoy, perhaps out of sport, if they don't want to stay in sport? You know, I personally, I worked in a bank and I worked in a branch. Until I understood what was out there, I hadn't got a clue whether I was any good at anything. I didn't know whether marketing was exciting. I didn't know whether product development was exciting. I didn't know whether project management was exciting. And it's the same here, is that if we can help people open their eyes to see what they enjoy whilst they're in sport, then it will give them more clear planning, for argument's sake, of where do I want to go? What can I do with my skills? Like you say, communication is massive. Communication is probably the strongest thing for an athlete, and leadership as well. And it's how do we show that those skills are wanted, desired, needed in more than just a sporting environment. Will, I think you've got a question for us.
Hi guys. Sorry, I'm Will Healy, by the way, current pro. I didn't.
Forgive me. I didn't
no, don't. I'm half as impressive as everyone here, but anyway. No, my question, just when hearing about the guys obviously who have retired. A friend of mine recently retired as of last season. He's actually going into kind of the finance world, and it's interesting. He turns around to me and he basically thought, look, you know, I've got some qualifications behind me, but I really thought my being a rugby player would give me this sort of like green card into things. And I'm just interested to hear from him, and then also get the guys who have retired. I think naturally as rugby players, we do just think maybe because we've had this kind of little halo around our head, you know, people want to have a bit of us when we play, but obviously when we finish, there's the next Wales hooker, there's the next England fly half coming up through the ranks. So it's kind of like, I'm just interested in how did you guys feel when you moved and tried to get employment? Did rugby necessarily help, or was it kind of actually like, oh right, yeah, thanks, yeah, well done, you were a rugby player, but actually doesn't mean a great deal of difference in terms of gaining that employment?
I'm happy to touch on that a bit if you want. From my experiences, yeah, I think when it's kind of the classic, when you're hot. Everybody wants a piece, don't they? And then, you know, I think there's that fear actually of when you finish that you've got a limited amount of time to get something done, and there's a bit of a panic actually when, you know, your first couple of years when you might be thinking, well, I need to train in something else and do something else. Well, am I missing the boat really on kind of the person I was almost? Because, like you say, you're pretty quickly forgotten for what you were, what you did. But I think there's definitely massive doors open. I mean, when I was living in London, you know, I was 5 years down at Saracens, and that opened a lot of doors in the city. If I wanted to get involved in the finance world, you know, that sort of thing, that option is available. There's probably certain lines you'd go down: account managers, traders. You know, a lot of the boys went into that sort of thing. It definitely opened those doors. But it's I think, as you've alluded to, is that the door you want to go through? Because once you're in, you kind of feel a little bit locked in, and then it's another big jump onto something else if you don't. You know, looking where I am now, if I have to try and open those doors now, I don't feel they'd particularly be there. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. That's probably something that Stimo would probably touch on and give me a big motivational kick up the arse that actually they are there if you get to the right place and the right people. But I managed to get where I am now, and be it only a teaching role within a school through the rugby. That got me straight through the door, and I was offered a job within 10 minutes of there not being a job, which was fantastic. But yeah, I think you've just got to be pretty wise, and if you can do that transition earlier and decide where you want to go with it, then look to open that door as you finish or before you finish. It's definitely something I'd look at.
Will, to answer your question, I was offered jobs by most of the corporates at Leicester Tigers, and the trouble was I took them all. You know what I mean? So I was working 5 jobs, $3.5 grand a car, left, right, and centre, because you're frantic. And this is what Sam Warburton was saying as well. You come out and you just don't know what you're good at. You don't know what you're going to survive. I think, and you're panicking. So you haven't really got a proper plan. You're just thinking, I need to earn some money. I've got kids. I'm living in Chiswick. I've got to feed them. My property investments were way over my head. I had 8 properties all around the world, and the market crashed. But and so you in hindsight, I didn't have a tight enough plan. I was just shooting from the hip, taking the opportunities, waiting for one of them to be really successful. And I think to answer your question, Scab, so you've spent 20 years developing those individual personal skills. You would never have been a successful rugby player without them. So the fact that you maybe not feeling you're hot anymore, the truth is, if you can market yourself appropriately, we've all got amazing skills. And I think the danger is we're not very good at self-promotion. We've always been humble, I'd say, unless you're Austin. And you talk about yourself way too much. But no, it's a joke. And he's obviously very successful. But I'd say that we judge ourselves by our last training session. We're not natural promotional people, but I think we need to be aware of how strong those talents are and that we've earned them. And then we need to reinvest and focus, because it's going to take us, in reality, another 5, 6, 7, 8 years to become really good at our next job. So we also need to be kind on ourselves, not beat each other up, but certainly don't come out of your job thinking, great, I'm going to walk into a 50, 60, 70K salary, because they're just not there. So, you need to have a plan. And I think people have went into the coaching roles, people go into the teaching roles, are very successful. But Scabs, now you said you're a bit of a crossroads again.
Yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying what I'm doing. It's fantastic, but I've got to be careful what I say. But yeah, I'm clearly, enjoying what I do. I think teaching is fantastic, but I'm always thinking, is it right? Is it exactly where I want to go? Like you say, I'm 5-6 years down the line now. I'm really progressing with my coach, and I'm enjoying my coach, and I kind of want to take it to another level. Whether that's within school, whether it's outside of school. I don't know, but that's kind of where I'm sat at the minute. But I mean, think just going back to the idea of preparing for transition. I did feel like I tried to. I mean, your era, my era, we kind of had there's careers after sport, which I mean, I don't know what your feelings are in and around that and how that went, but we always attempted to do that. I sat down with Russell, I think his name was. Went through a lot of the ideas about, because I thought there was some of the boys that didn't know whether to trust these people or not. It was kind of, well, I'm giving all my information, all my contacts, all my giving them all my ideas of what I might potentially do, and are they going to run away with my ideas? There's all that behind it. I also jumped into the city. I did a lot of kind of training. I dropped into Coca-Cola and did bits there. I set up. I tried an internet business, Rugby United. Those that might remember it, I was flouting that around everywhere, and that moved on pretty well. And then I actually got shafted by the internet company through that. I mean, that was the time of MySpace and what have you around, but pre-Facebook. But that could have gone really well, but it didn't. Property investments. There were people coming into Saracens because we had a bit of money back then. Again, the crash hit. That kind of hit everything then, and then against what I originally thought I would do, I jumped across then to France, into the land of the frogs, and it was a fantastic experience. 3 years at racing. Sorry, yes, Serge. Désolé, mate. We had 3 years at racing, then I ended up 2 years up at Lille, did a bit of coaching, player coaching up there. Which, again, awesome experience. Learned French, learned a different culture. But then suddenly, it's kind of 5 years away from anything really. I kind of chopped myself off. I had 2 kids, loved the French lifestyle, dropped back into Yorkshire, away from kind of where I'd been for 15 years or whatever, and that kind of left me in a bit of a position where that was kind of, I felt like I was starting again, and I jumped into teaching, and that's where I am now. But I completely agree. If you can figure more of a path of where you want to go prior, make some inroads in your way, but things do happen. Injury. I went to France. This kind of thing really changed tack completely on what I was looking to do.
Great. Hoggy, I'm going to come to you, mate. You've waited patiently, had hand in your hair as if we were in a classroom.
No, it's interesting just listening to Scabs and Rolly and talking about when they're actually trying to create networks and try to foster relationships. I'm big on now, and I came from an amateur era where we had a full-time job and we trained, and I get the demands of a professional athlete have gone through the roof. But I'm a big believer that you can run both in parallel. And instead of waiting for the last 3 or 4 years of your career and scrambling about trying to make a connection or trying to get a degree, I've got this thought about, and I'd be interested in the guys that are playing at the moment. Can we run a parallel programs now as an 18, 19-year-old kid for the next 14, 15 years of your career? So somebody like Alex playing international rugby, doing really well. But is there an element as clubs or as the rugby fraternity that we have to provide a parallel program that's compulsory for players? And it's not necessarily a degree, it's about fostering relationships over a 10-year span that'll actually, when they come out at 33, 34, they're actually useful to the business world, to the workplace, rather than wait for the last couple of years of scrambling about. And people talk about, my star when I've stopped playing. Well, why don't you trade in your star when you're actually playing international rugby? And I believe there's enough time in the working calendar that you can run your program, your performance program, as well as a compulsory aspect of upskilling yourself for life after rugby.
Elliot, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think something like that is compulsory would be brilliant, because I think when you're in the mix of it, when you are a day-to-day professional rugby player and every week you're focusing on the next team, the next team, the next team. It's probably too easy to just focus solely on that and just get caught up by rugby. Like, I'm probably the worst for it. I'll think rugby before I go to bed, as soon as I wake up. Obviously doing rugby all day, every day, can't really let it go. And it's only probably the last sort of year, 2 years that I've gone from feeling like a youngster in a team to probably one of the senior boys and one of the players that sort of everyone looks to. But you don't really notice that as it's happening. And I just feel like rugby goes so quick, but you don't realise it when you're a youngster. So getting boys when they're young to have something going alongside it and to be compulsory rather than just focus on rugby would be really beneficial, to be honest. I don't know. Obviously, we're all in different points of our career, but I know when you're young and you listen to blokes say that it happens so quick and your career goes so quick. When you're a youngster, you probably don't take that in. You probably don't realise it. But it's probably the last year when I've come to really think, Christ, it is happening quick. And I'm 26 now, and all I've wanted to do is be where I am. But it could end quite quickly as well. So yeah, I think something like that compulsory would be really good. I think we've got the WRPA and stuff like that at the moment, but I think it's a bit too yeah, I've got to be careful what I say, but I think it's a bit too wishy-washy. You can't really get what you want out of it, to be honest.
I don't think, Elliot's Martin. So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I've talked to the RPA as well, and they aren't geared to providing this kind of support, really. They're there for you now. They're there for an athlete to help them, from a legal perspective, from getting an education, etc., etc. What they're not really prepared for, and they accept this. They put their hands up and said this is they haven't got the resources to give you that kind of quality of advice and support and knowledge that perhaps you're looking for.
We've all said that.
Can I just make a quick point?
Yes, go.
Just reflecting on my career, I know it's 100 years ago, but I thought wrongly. I don't want to look for something outside rugby. I want to focus, when I'm a professional rugby player, I want to focus on rugby 100%. So I know when it finishes that I gave that absolute everything, and then I'll move on to my next stage of my career. And I was wrong. I think the benefits of having outside stimulus away from rugby is really important to get balance in life. And I made the mistake of saying, right, I only ever want to concentrate on rugby. I don't want to take anything else on because it may detract from my rugby. And I think in hindsight, I was wrong. Well, I know I was wrong. And I think you can definitely balance some sort of stimulus. It's not education. It might be something else outside rugby. It makes you a much more balanced performer week in, week out.
Yeah, that's assuming that Huggy, everyone's the same from the same mould, isn't it? I mean, there might be some people that would only make it if that's what they want to be, would only make it professional if that's what they. That's the theory, isn't it? I agree with you completely. But speaking from another person, your Johnny Wilkinsons or whatever, who were literally, that is me. Every minute of my day is rugby, and I can't think about anything else. Would that? I don't know.
That's a fair point, isn't it? Everyone's each to their own. We can only encourage people to think about their futures, and like you say, people say, I think Elliot said, people say, oh, it's going to fly by. It does fly by, but when you're 18, 19, 20, even unfortunately 26, it does fly by. I can't believe I'm 43 and it's 20 years since I was playing sport. It was, that's how long ago it was for me to play at semi-pro. So it zooms and you just don't get it. But when you're in it, you just think I'm in it for the moment. So, I think there's absolutely probably the opportunity gaps, ways of balancing both. And I think actually it would help your performance on the pitch if you knew that behind the scenes you were enjoying stuff off the pitch as well. So, Ollie, I'm going to come to you.
Yeah.
If I may.
Yeah, I think that's always been my mentality, really, is tunnel vision. Sort of don't have a plan B because it'll distract you from plan A and just put everything into your rugby. But I think the last 2 or 3 years, as I've matured a bit and realised that obviously it is a short career, then I started putting things in place. And I'd like to see it compulsory for everyone to sort of have something after rugby. But then, it's obviously the problem of how do you manage that? I think it helps if your coaches are willing to give you that little extra time. If you need a morning off or an afternoon off to study or get work experience, then that's always great. But I feel like the amount of spare time we've got as players, we're basically working part-time. I mean, especially at the Dragons, most days we finish by, say, 1 o'clock, so we've got our extra time. And it just does give you that bit of a release from rugby and peace of mind, really, knowing that you've got things in place. Touch wood, nothing does happen injury-wise and stuff, but making that transition as smooth as possible. So I think if it could be made compulsory, then that's great, especially for the younger kids. But it's also a case of how do you implement that, I suppose.
And I think for me, it goes back to my favourite word, or least favourite word in some ways as well, is the word plan. And it's working, like Hoggy said, in a way, using all the years. If you're 28, 29, 30, and you're going, oh Christ, I've got 2 years to go, you're going to rush into making decisions you perhaps don't want to make, and also you make badly. Whereas if we have a bit more time with the player and we work out what they enjoy, like we said earlier, how it can enhance, try different experiences. And that, I guess, a bit of what the business of you is all about, and World After Sport is all about, is hopefully opening doors to say, try this, see whether it's something that floats your boat. It's utilising some of those sponsors to help open doors to us, to give us opportunities, and see what we like, and see what encourages us. And also potentially what you get then is the opportunity to work with those people a bit closer. And that could obviously lead to future careers as well. So the expectations of the athlete then utilises both. So one thing we were talking to Rugby Australia about a couple of weeks ago was they've got this as compulsory now. And Steve Anderson has got some work, and he's actually going to be sharing some data. I think, Andy, you've just sent me a question about data to prove that dual careers aid performance. Absolutely, because it takes that one, let's say, tunnel vision that Ollie just used as opening eyes, broadening horizons, giving confidence as well. So for me, I would love it to be compulsory. I can't say it's going to be anytime soon, but I'd love to say that, my mission is to help players, clubs, help it become a kind of compulsory, and really just open the eyes to people. So I'll shut up from there because it's not my meeting, but for me, I think there's real opportunity, and I'd love to help drive it forward for the likes of yourself, Elliot, and Ollie, and Brett, and share the experiences of some of the other guys as well, so that we've got that. Tim,
just on that,
Tim, I think you want to add in there.
Yeah, I'd say it's important from both angles. If you can get work experience, I think it was Brett asking the question in the chat room. It's good for the potential employer as well as you. You can de-risk the whole thing, because we've got this cliff coming at the end of our career where we're not going to earn another penny unless we've made preparation. But if we can get work experience, we de-risk it from us because we actually like it and we feel passionate about it. And the potential employer can see that we can actually, for example, close a deal. And so I think it's really important from both sides that you can prepare and ideally start earning money at the same time as your rugby career. Why not? Why not start having, you can work 2 hours a night on something. Like Scabs, I did exactly like you. I had 4 or 5 little businesses going at the same time, trying to work out what was going to be my route forward after rugby. And this time round, I feel confident and competent to run businesses and try and change the world again. But if I'd started earlier during my rugby career, I wouldn't have maybe made the same number of mistakes.
Absolutely. Phil, you've been quiet today. Have you got anything from your side?
I've just stuck some gobbledygook up, but yeah, for me, I think I agree with Hoggy, what Ollie said in terms of making it compulsory, because I do believe you can run, parallel workshops, to do whatever it might be alongside the rugby. I agree on that totally. And I think what that will do is, it'll sort of help people's self-awareness. It'll help the guys, understand the skills they're actually developing during their career. It'll help them understand what they actually enjoy doing, you know. And that then will build self-reliance. It can arguably build self-drive as well. And make sure, as Tim has said along the way in this conversation, that you actually start to understand what, you know, the right advice or good advice is, or a job that actually suits you, rather than, you know, just taking advice off the next guy who comes along with good intention, maybe, or the next job. So you become a little bit more aware of what actually you can, you know, suit you basically, and how you can transfer those skills post career. You know, while you're actually in the career, it's, you know, while you're actually playing, while you're actually still in the trenches, so to speak. So, you know, I think it's important, that there is a balance. And I think, as Andy put up there, is there research, Andy? Are you saying there is research to say that, you know, with sort of a balanced approach, it helps aid performance?
Yeah, Phil, there's the Australian Institute of Sport and the EIS have recently put stuff out that, and the AIS was done on the NRL in Australia, so they had, I can't remember the exact data around the players, but it was around 80% of players, they statistically had proof that their performance levels were higher, and it was more to do, it was similar to what we were saying there, that players felt more confident, they had less concerns, their worries around transition and their second career, you know, basically they weren't there, so therefore their ability to then perform and concentrate on the year and now what they were doing in the rugby performance actually was enhanced. So it's difficult, and the point around the WRPA stroke RPA, I mean, both Australia, so Rupert in Australia, the New Zealand Rugby Union, they've got it mandated in all player contracts that, you know, it's 1 day a week. It's not a, so the great thing for that, it's not Elliot trying to get away from the Dragons and stuff like that, or Phil as a DOR trying to put, you know, fill up the schedule. It's in the schedule. There's no argument. There's no debate having a conflict around it because it's there. Whereas if some clubs do it and some don't, then you know, will that affect performance? So it's got to be led by, I think, the union and the players' associations, because to try and get an individual club to do it will be difficult, I think.
Yeah, why I believe in it so much is over the period of time, you know, I've had some jobs at you know, clubs like the Scarlets and the Blues, but also Leeds when we were growing it, and a few of the boys came through this experience. And more recently with Namibia, because most of the players, I think about 70% of the boys that we took to the World Cup were actually working as well as playing rugby. And during the course of the 4 years, we ended up doing, because we wanted to get the players to be more self-reliant, more self-driven, we ended up doing a diagnostic called Strength Finder, which is all about, you know, increasing self-awareness and awareness of others. And that had an amazing, I didn't realise at the time, I thought it would be effective, but we had a guy called Simon Hurry from Cape Town, who John Mitchell introduced us to, who drove the programme for us for a year. And then when we actually were going to the World Cup and we started to use a sort of a team psychologist or a team mental skills guy, he was far more effective because the players had really started to become more, as I said earlier, more self-aware and more aware of others. It's been brilliant, and it's helped them in their daily lives as well, in their jobs and their ability to balance what they were doing, and the type of commitment they needed in order to get ready to go to a World Cup, you know, to be competitive.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, it's a massive growth area for me in rugby, and it can be driven by the unions, by the Players Association, and in fact the players themselves can do a massive favour, I think, to themselves by pushing for it and turning up in numbers, you know, and voting with their feet, basically, that this is a very, very important part of their career, not just now, but, you know, for not just for the future, but for now as well.
Agreed. Andy, I'm conscious you have to dive off for another call, but it'd be great to have you on again soon.
Yeah, no, thanks. Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Cheers,
thanks. Cheers.
Great. Okay, so I mean, I think we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, from what I hear. I think you've just hit the net. For me, Phil, you probably just said the key thing, which is there's not just one person that can influence this. There's, yes, there's the unions. There are the clubs to encourage the players to take it seriously. I think the challenge is that, again, the clubs, a bit like we said earlier, just haven't got the resources like the RPA perhaps to do this. But again, if the players are stamping their feet and saying we need this, we want to make sure we're driven for the future as well, then it can only help.
I think it is important that the lads can drive this with, because there are plenty of DORs and head coaches out there who like Hoggy, for example, and plenty of other coaches I know are keen for this, because it creates balance, it creates well-rounded players. We're not, just as Elliot said, he's immersed in all of this, and to give him an opportunity to have something else to look at and some balance in that area is fantastic. Look, you're going to kiss a few frogs along the way, like you do when you're growing up with the girls, but that's how it is. But it's just trying to make sure that that support is there for the boys, so that the players, so that, and they're all intelligent guys. Most of the guys who play top level football nowadays, with all the flow charts, Hoggy's game plan, flipping heck, he's a degree in astrophysics to get on with that job, let me tell you. No, it's what are you joking, Hoggy? But it is important. It is important for the boys to be able to feel comfortable as well in driving it. That's the key thing.
Absolutely. I'm going to come to the younger lads. What's your thoughts of all that we're saying? I know that, Elliot, you've said a few things. Will and Ollie, any views from you? Ollie, we can't hear you at the minute, matey. I can see you talking, but I couldn't hear you. Still can't hear you, mate. No, I don't know why. I can't hear you at all. Will, you dive in for a second if you can?
Yeah. Well, I just made a observation on the chat, and that I think everything has been said. I agree with. I think the tough thing, obviously, if you make something very much sort of mandatory, is in my view, one, you have to have the exposure as to the different things out there as to what you enjoy doing. So for some boys, they might really like the idea of getting into finance. Not for me at all, but they might like to get into the journalist world, media. They might like to get into various things. So you've got to be exposed to it. But at the same time, like in my opinion, what I've done a few bits and bobs. I'm just about to finish a degree. I don't know if I'm going to get graduated this year with everything that's going on, but and that's in media and journalism. And that was simple and enjoyable for me because it was simple to do because I really genuinely enjoyed it. And I feel, and I'm sure everyone will probably say, and I know there's that element whereby you have to have a few bad experiences to actually understand what you do enjoy. But if I'm doing something outside of rugby, it has to not be a chore. It has to be something that I generally wish to do. And I'm not saying I foresee myself getting involved into the media or whatever in the future. I don't know. I'm 26. I'm, playing professionally and still got international ambitions with the USA and everything like that. So I'm focused on rugby, but I am doing other stuff. But I do absolutely believe it has to be something that you do want to do, and it can't just be a chore.
I think you're right there. Absolutely. Ollie, I'm going to try. Let's see if we can get you back.
Have you got me now?
Got you now, mate.
Yeah, similar to what Will just said, really. I think the big thing for me is just finding something I enjoy. I think the thing I worry about is having to hate to go to work on a Monday. So, yeah, the big thing for me really is just finding that one thing and just taking the next few years of my career alongside rugby to sort of open as many doors and network with as many people as I can, really.
Absolutely, and I think that's part of the plan that we talked about earlier on, Ollie, and Will, is to help for some of those thoughts, because again, you are very much focused on the sport, whether it's training, whether it's playing, whether it's preparing, and also for travelling. So having an ally like World After Sport or the RPA or the WRPA, whoever, who you know isn't got your vested interest in, and who can say, hey, guess what? I've found you 3 companies you might like to talk to, whether it's in media, whether it's in finance, or anything else. You know, I worked and talked with Sam Harrison at Tigers, who did woodwork, and created his skateboards and all the rest of it. So, you know, everybody has a skill and has a capability, and everybody has a different desire as well. And it goes back to what Rob was saying with Dan about the enjoyment. So for me, you know, making it mandatory worries me that it will force people or make people feel like they're forced to do something they don't want to do. But at the same time, it's about doing the right things. And I would love to, you know, and my ambition is to support athletes of all sports to work these sort of things out and work for 10 or 15 years with them, so we can do the right things. So when they have finished their sport, they're hitting the ground running with the things they like to do or want to do, rather than at that point trying to suss out and perhaps, let's say, fall into teaching or fall into things that they hadn't thought about. And that's not to say that they're not enjoyable things, because my wife's a PE teacher as well. So, you know, end of the day, I can see the value of it, and I can see the value in all jobs. And for me, it's
Martin,
giving
can I jump
athletes
in?
that advice.
Could I jump in? Ollie, you mentioned before you wanted to do work in fitness.
Yeah.
So for example, one of the projects I'm working at the moment is to be able to get you qualified as a personal fitness trainer now during COVID.
Yeah, so
we can do that for you.
I'm pretty much almost finished my level 3 PT course, and I'm just enrolled on strength and conditioning fundamentals, which is an online course. So I've started making steps to do that. But if there's anything else you think would be beneficial to me, then yeah, I'd be happy to have a chat.
But yeah, just one of those things. I thought, while you guys are stuck, you're never gonna have this time again. You can get qualified up to level 3 with a friend of mine, and we'll be launching that out as World After Sport. So I think it's one of those things where I've got a financial services business, and people like James Grindle, whatever, become really qualified in financial services. That's a wonderful career, I think, to take your black book into finance. Or there's the other side is obvious, is the going after personal fitness training. You know, a lot of people in rugby would feel really interested, I feel, of becoming qualified. And if you could pick that qualification up now by distance learning over the next few weeks.
Stimo, I'd like to be involved with that, if possible. That's the one thing that I'm keen to kind of tick some boxes in around the S&C athletic development stuff. So I'll pick up on that after, if that's all right.
Yeah, and it's just we didn't know COVID was coming, but how can we grab it and not let it define us? Let's make sure we can grow, even though we can't play rugby, for example.
Or go to the pub in my world, but yes.
I think the interesting thing about the doing something alongside of what you're actually doing. I always think back to when I wasn't a professional rugby player. Rugby was my hobby, and as soon as rugby became my job, I left that hobby. I didn't really have a hobby. I didn't have that switch off. So I think that's probably the thing, isn't it? That this essentially becomes your hobby when the rugby becomes your school or your uni or whatever that used to be prior. That kind of seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, I'm conscious of time. I've kept you for well over anticipated. Serge, did you come off mute? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was looking to react on one of the talk about one of the guy was saying that he wanted to go out and meet the maximum people in order to get contact. And I found out really useful, as Tim said earlier, you need to do like your due diligence while you are playing. In order to go out and meet people, you need to make sure you need to mark out or put in the paper what you really want to which people you need to meet, or which people will be useful for you, because it is really easier to go out and meet a lot of people and end up having a lot of business cards. And again, you need to make sure people you are meeting are relevant. Therefore, you can spend more time, quality time with them in order to understand what they are doing and what can be used for you. Then it's just like an experience from what I've been doing for 10 years, where it's very pleasing to meet a lot of people, but and the downside is you need to make sure that meeting will be effective for you.
Definitely. Thank you. Guys, I'm going to draw it to an end, if I may. There's just one thing I'm going to do before I end the call. Something I'd like to try, which we didn't do last time, is just to ask you for a soundbite of, perhaps you've got 10 seconds each. I'll come to everybody for 10 seconds. What have you learned from, or what's your takeaway from today? And then what I'd like to ask you to consider doing on our behalf is perhaps just posting something on social media, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter. Also, what your thoughts are. Now, that could be you videoing your thoughts for a few seconds and putting it on social media, or it could be you typing something. It's not something you have to do. It's just a request to perhaps put at World After Sport on there, so we've been mentioned. We want to get more people on these calls. We want to get more conversation and more thoughts, more ideas. Phil and I always do a debrief after these sessions to talk about what went well, what didn't, what we can do better, and also what we want to talk about next time. So for me, I've had a really enjoyable hour and 3/4, and I'd like to thank you all for your time. It's really appreciated that you've given out such time to me. But also, obviously, we're here to help going forward as well. And like I said, these calls happen every fortnight for players and athletes. And then what we do is we have a Wednesday session, which is more for coaches. Similar conversations or similar style. We have a slightly different topic. So this week it's about building stronger teams. But if I can just come around the table now, for, like I say, 10 seconds, what will you take away? And if you can also post that on social media, I'd just appreciate it. So let me start. I'm going to go in order of who I'm looking at on the screen. So Hoggy, I'm going to come to you first, if I may. What's your takeaway from today?
I just think
on the spot.
Skip to somebody else, Martin, and come back to me.
All right, who can I come to? Stimo, I'm going to come to you, mate, if I can, because you've always got a thought.
I just thanks once again. I've enjoyed chatting to athletes, rugby players. I think they're very intelligent guys, and with a little bit of guidance, they can be phenomenal in the world after sport as well. And we've just got to spend a bit of time investing in ourselves so that we're not feeling vulnerable, so we can actually go and smash the next part of our lives just as much as you guys are smashing it on the field at the moment.
Well done, thank you.
Martin, yeah, I need to go to a next meeting in a few minutes. Yeah, I really enjoy meeting you all, guys. And again, I think World After Sport is an amazing project. And I definitely believe we are, as a group of people, really well open-minded and really well open to exchange. And I really like what Phil Davis said about helping the players while they are playing. And I really wanted, Phil, if you don't mind, talk through in the future, because that is, for me, something I really wanted to control and understand more deeper as a coach, because I definitely believe that if you know your player very well, you can ask them the best things on the field. And thank you for sharing this experience, and really useful.
Fantastic.
And I say bye-bye to you. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Brett.
Yeah, I just think that any time spent on kind of further development and for life after rugby isn't wasted time, especially during this period where we've got a lot of time on our hands. I think it's pretty crucial as players, but everyone to kind of look into the future and see what else we can develop ourselves with. And any time spent on that, if it doesn't produce anything, it still isn't wasted. It just narrows down what we potentially want to do in the future.
Thank you very much. Will, you're on mute at the minute.
Yeah, I think it's just been about proactive, and that being a rugby player doesn't define you. It should never define you ultimately going forward. So making sure you, as Brett just said, make the most of the situation we're in now, because you can plan. I think that's the big word from today, plan, and you'll get success from it.
Fantastic, thanks. Dan?
Yeah, interesting one for me. I mean, I'm still working. First day back at work today. I'm sure Rob is again ignoring a couple of calls at the minute. But no, I think the biggest probably take home for me is a few. I think plan my own time better for me. I think just thinking then again about rugby careers and what you do alongside them. I'm in a career now where rugby, I suppose, is still my career. I'm coaching rugby. I'm loving my rugby. I want to take my coaching on further, but I think if I can probably look more at my hobbies now, on what I can do alongside myself as well, and potentially find something outside of rugby for that. Make an effort, contact people more. I think sat here in Yorkshire, you're kind of a little bit away from a lot of people, potentially. I need to make more effort to reconnect with people and follow up on those contacts. Market appropriately. I thought that was quite an interesting one. Stimmer sort of said, and kind of judged by your last session, etc. And this COVID opportunity, yes, I'm working, but I've still got, I want to make use of this time. Particularly, probably I can run it into my summer. I'm going to look at developing myself in probably a few different areas as well. Quite
Fantastic.
selfish review, but
no, brilliant.
Great 10 seconds, Dan.
Sorry, mate.
Time management, right? Is that another one?
Right. Planning. Time management, yeah.
Elliot.
Yeah, cheers, boys. I thought some great points, some stuff I wrote down, some great points from Carl, Phil. Probably the biggest thing I wrote down today to take from this was to just shoot your shot and go with what you're really passionate about. I think we all sort of started becoming a rugby player because that's what you really wanted to do. That's what you're passionate about. That was your dreams, but you've got to have dreams beyond that. And I think Stimmo's point about starting something early and earning some cash before you finish and trialing it, seeing if it works, I think that's a big point I'll probably take away from today.
Great stuff, thank you. Oliver?
Big thing for me is being aware of the skills we already possess, really, from playing rugby, and the importance of putting things in place, especially during the time off now, just taking advantage of a few weeks off we've got and coming out a better person, more well-rounded individual, really.
Fantastic, thank you. Rob, can I come to you? Rob, aircraft. There we go.
Sorry about that. Just keep losing connection there. Yeah. I suppose I look back on this a little bit. It's just made get you thinking again a little bit, and just I suppose a little bit of regret, really, to be honest, that I was so engulfed in rugby that I didn't look for external opportunities or anything. So I suppose that's something that I'd be really keen in my role now as well, of just trying to make the students aware of that, if they do go down the professional route, to make sure that they're actually doing something alongside it as well.
Thank you. Hoggy, you ready?
Yeah, I'm all good. COVID's changed the landscape in life. We've got an opportunity in rugby to change the landscape. I think there will be, or I suspect there'll be, a financial change in the game. I think there's a real opportunity this period of time to change the mindset of players and clubs around parallel learning and parallel education. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I think the game is going to change from what you read in the paper about the domestic structure of the games, the competition structure. I suspect the finance will change in the game. And I think it's a real opportunity for players and clubs to change the mindset. We as a rugby fraternity have to look after our own, and we have a magic opportunity to do it now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Hoggy. And can I wrap up with Phil? Philip? Hello? It's over to you, mate. Yes, Phil. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can, Mark. Yeah. Yeah. Good points there. Yeah, look, just again, thanks everyone for coming on. It's been great. It's been terrific listening, and learning some ideas to move forward. But for me, I think it's having a balanced career plan, as everybody has said, but also running something parallel to that you enjoy, and you're understanding the skills that you're developing during that period to take forward. into the future. I think those are the things for me. About, you know, a plan, you know, understand the skills you're developing and really enjoy it as well. And then you keep doing it and keep doing it and keep developing in the future. So if we can, you know, thanks again, boys, brilliant. Sorry I was a little bit late at the beginning, but if there are certain sound bites, as Martin has said, that we can put up on social media again, just to, you know, promote what we're doing, to get more people involved, because ultimately it's about supporting, you know, the players and the coaches for that matter. We still haven't got a coaching association yet, which we're trying to attend to as well, but hopefully it's about, you know, support and help, guidance, you know, for us to move forward successfully as individuals and as a sport as well. So as Carla said, there's a big change, I think, going to happen after COVID-19, and let's try and be at the forefront of it as players, coaches. You know, World After Sport can help that, that's for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks everybody. And I guess my last challenge to each of you is to try and find one more person to join next time. The more the merrier. It'd be great to have a bigger group, and we can talk about, you know, the next subjects, which, like I say, Phil and I will send an email out to everybody in the next week or so to confirm what the next subject is. It'd be great to have all you on, but if we could double it for the time after, then fantastic. If you'd like to join the coaches meetings as well and the conversations with coaches, then again, more than happy for people to join in, listen and learn. But thank you again. Massive thanks for being on for so long. Hope you've enjoyed it, got a lot out of it, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. So have a great rest of the day. Cheers, guys.